Well, well, well. Ha, 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 ha. Welcome in to a brand new edition of Snaps. And if the chat is any early indication, it will be a very celebratory edition of Snaps as we are joining you. What's today's date? Today is the 10th, January 10th, 2023. About 11 years ago on this day, I was fresh off losing a national championship. 11 years to the day, the Georgia Bulldogs win their second national championship in a row. Of course, this Snaps, your new favorite daily college football podcast. We are here on the Volume Sports Podcast Network as well as the Volume Sports YouTube channel. Love being here. Got to hang out with Papa Colin last night. It was awesome. I'm one of your hosts, T-Bob Hebert, an LSU man, a man of class and culture. And then there is my co-host, Mr. Aaron Murray, Georgia Bulldog legend, ESPN personality, and now, once again, national champion. Aaron, how we feeling this morning, man?
I feel great. Two things. One, you say man of class. Please, for those who did not go back and watch last night's show with Colin, it was awesome to kind of get his reactions. He specifically called T-Bob a wild man.
Yes.
Wild man. That's
yes.
what, so
yes.
I don't know how those two things kind of go together.
No, look, that's it. I mean, come on. We're not idiots. That's no. That's the dynamic. We're not idiots. It's a classic Tommy Boy setup, right?
No, it is.
Farley,
it is.
You get David Spade. Yeah, I'm Farley. Yeah, Farley is a man of class and culture.
Farley,
just because you don't agree with his style of class or his style of culture. Yes, we may be a bit outside the accepted norms of you straight-laced nerds, but no, class and culture, one and the same. Maybe just a bit of a wilder class and culture.
Yeah, just very, very extreme. All right, so that's first off. Second off, I feel weird. Like, yes, I wore the uniform. Yes, I played at University of Georgia for 4 years, starting quarterback, this, that, and the other. But like, to call me a national champion, does that go? Because like, I view myself as a fan now. Like, yes, I'm a Letterman. I'm an alum. So but I wasn't on the field. I didn't win a championship. I'm not going to get a ring. How
that
does
is why
work?
No, but that is why I'm calling you a national champion, because I'm saying that to the fans. Because those are the people who get to share in this national championship. You get to walk around for the next year. You get to talk crap to all of your SEC brethren. You get to puff your chest out and say, look at us. And you can use the us. Because if you're a fan of Georgia, yeah, you're in that number, man. You don't win a natty just for the team. I'm not saying you get a ring. I'm not saying you get on the team photo. But no,
you don't get a purple heart either. But you know.
Yeah, but I get this comment. But I do get this comment, like when I feel like I've said this in the past, not on shows, but like just in public with like buddies that maybe went to other schools. And I was like, yeah, we're the champs. I'm like, no, you weren't. You never won. You weren't. Your team lost to Alabama in 2012. Like they always throw that dig, like, no, you're not a part of that team.
So that's where,
that's
where you're almost excluded, ironically, because you actually played, right?
Yes.
Like if you had not actually played, nobody would have any trouble saying we, or you would not have any trouble saying we are champions, this or that. But let go of that. It doesn't matter. As you said, you are a fan. I'm a fan. I'm not a journalist. I'm a fan of college football. I try to be an entertainer. I don't try to break news. I don't try to be right on stories. I try to be careful. I'm not out here just trying to like spread misinformation and just make a mess of everything. But no, I'm a fan, and I try to be an entertainer. And so that allows us to say that, we won the national championship. You best believe when LSU was on that run, my gums were flapping constantly. You should have seen this wedding that I went to in Columbus, Georgia, just a couple, it was like at the end of the season, but before the Natty. It's all Georgia fans, all Auburn fans, because they existed in this like little triangle. And I mean, the entire go, just yelling at people, just getting after him, dude, because we were good. So in that same way, Aaron, you can absolutely use we. You're not somehow excused because you're not excluded because you played for them. If anything, that's even more.
I feel like I'm like in limbo. I'm like in that in between. Like you said, I'm a former player turned fan. Didn't win it when I was on the field. and people still view me as a former player, not as a fan. So it's hard for me to take credit. It's like that. It's a weird position where I don't want to feel like I'm like on the tailcoats of these guys who have actually gone out there and won it as a former player, trying to live the glory that I never got to achieve.
So I did go through, I know what you're getting at, right? I mean, obviously, as I said, 11 years ago to this day, I was a key part of a team that lost a national championship very badly. And then when you won it in 2019, there was a bit of awkwardness, maybe a bit of jealousy about, wow, these guys actually did it. They actually got across the finish line. And you don't want, essentially, you don't want to feel like you are stealing valor, right? You don't want to stolen valor. Their national championship. But I don't think you're doing that. Look at everybody in the chat here with us today. Red and Black Dog, Whipmaster Hart, Mary Powers, Christopher David, Light Dog. And then we got a mixture of LSU and Georgia in here. Josh Reimer, Dennis Darris Sr., Rob D. But a lot of them are UGA fans. And you are in that number as well. And if you are a UGA fan today, you just witnessed your team put together the biggest ass whooping in national championship history to win back-to-back national championships, to only have one loss now in 2 years, and to have a future that looks as bright as we have seen, arguably even brighter than Bama coming out of 2012. There is, today is a day where if you were a Georgia Bulldog fan, student, alumni, whatever, today is your day. So do not be beholden to some sort of limits that you are putting on yourselves. Like you can worry about that later. Today, you should be dancing in the streets and hugging your neighbor and walking around honking horns and barking at other adults, but not in the furry sense, which I had to explain to you yesterday, in the Georgia Bulldog sense. So yeah, today's your day, man. Go live it up.
All right, I appreciate that. Well, I will continue. I have not slept. I may have slept 2 hours last night. Like I had such a high, I honestly felt like, after a game, like it's hard to go to sleep. It's hard to unwind. I kind of get the same thing as when I broadcast games, it usually takes me a little bit to kind of settle down after doing it, especially, when you do a big time game. Last night, I went to a Georgia event. Obviously we had our late night show with Colin. And then afterwards I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to bed. It was like midnight at the time. And I go in bed. I'm literally in bed for like an hour and a half. I can't sleep. I'm like, screw it. I'm going to go feed the baby. Got up, did a little dream feed, 2:00 in the morning. She finished, put her back down, went back downstairs. I'm just like laying in the bed, invited the dogs up, petted the dogs for like an hour. They're loving it. And finally fell asleep like at 3 a.m. I'm just like, man, I was so wound up. And so just remind me like last year. So last year we're in Indianapolis and Georgia won. And it is a shit show. We're having a blast. We're at the team hotel. We're getting after it. We're having a good time. And it's like 5:00 in the morning. I'm like wide awake. Like I'm juiced. So I took a coffee. I said, screw it. I'm going to just start driving home. I've been up for like 24 hours. So I got in my car and so I've been driving back from Indianapolis back to Atlanta. And like, I text my wife, like I'm in the car, I'm driving, and she woke up like at 7 or 8. She goes, Aaron, go to a hotel now and go to bed. So I pulled over. I found some random hotel, went to bed for probably an hour, woke up, finished the drive. And I was so exhausted. This is the best part. So I'm exhausted. I'm getting calls from TV stations and radio shows like, hey, jump on. So like, I forgot, like local Fox or ABC or whatever it is, said, hey, can you pull over the side of the road and do a Zoom call? So I'm like, sure. So I pulled over at some random gas station. I'm exhausted. I'm emotional. And, I look like shit. And they start asking me questions about Stetson, obviously the hug, the embrace after the game. And they're like, what did that mean? Your relationship with Stetson and in that moment and beating Alabama. And like, I'm so physically exhausted. I start crying on the Zoom call. I'm literally like, streaming from my face.
Bro, you can't get.
I'm so tired that I'm just literally like bawling, like, oh my God, I'm on the side of the highway. Cars are passing. People are like looking at me like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? Decked out in UJ gear. And I'm like, I'm just so proud of him. And like, it was just such an awesome embrace. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to stop taking interviews until like tomorrow until I get like 12 hours of sleep. So,
bro, you cannot be worried about saying we if you literally shed tears after being asked about a Stetson hug. Like, you're not going to get any more ridiculous than that. Like, if you weren't self-conscious,
I was
there,
pure
then
exhaustion.
you're good to go,
Exhausted. Oh my God, I was so tired.
I think the only time that I ever cried on air is very random. I was hungover. We used to do this movie podcast called Real Friends, like movie reel. Get it? Awful concept. You had to watch like 3 movies a week to keep up with the conversation. Just an awful, awful concept. But we watch Family Stone. I love Family Stone. It's a Christmas movie, but there is a
the Sarah Jessica Parker vehicle.
Yes. Have you ever seen Family Stone, Brum? I know me and Brum are both kind of movie nerds. We talk about it a lot.
Sure.
It is cheesy, but it has an incredible heart. Okay. And it is wonderful. And again, it's a movie. I come from a big family, so I think I kind of relate to it. But in that movie, Diane Keaton has breast cancer. And there is a scene where who is the actor? Judd. God damn it. Coach. Who is Coach from the old sitcom, Brum?
Stand by.
God, I'm gonna have to watch a movie tonight.
I am.
Whatever. It's immaterial to the story. The point is, there's a scene where the husband and the wife.
Craig.
Yes, Craig T. Nelson. Thank you. Craig Nelson, Diane Keaton are in bed. Diane Keaton has breast cancer. They've been married forever. They have this big family, and she is talking to him about how she's scared. Like, she is legitimately scared of dying. And he caresses her, and they're holding one another. And I've been with my wife since I was like 16. That's literally like my biggest fear in the world. I started talking about all this during this podcast, filming it, and I didn't just start like tearing up. I started sobbing, actively sobbing. Like, it's a turkey. It's Craig. You can see the fear in her eyes. Like, it was bad. So, hey, man, look, sometimes you just gotta let it out.
You gotta let it go. Just gotta let it go.
It's a good movie. But it's a good movie, everybody. Shut up. All right, look, let's get into the actual game. Because what we witnessed last night was something pretty interesting, right? The season ended in the exact same way it began. Think back to the beginning of snaps, Aaron. Maybe we've been doing it a couple weeks, maybe like a month at a time. Week 1 was finally here. We were so excited. I remember being in my new office on my new computer, and I'm like watching all the games, and Oregon UGA comes on. We're like, whoa, dude, let's go. Quality football. And UGA smashed Oregon. And at the time that week, my big whole takeaway that night, as we did our first snap Saturday night show, was UGA announced itself as a dragon of the realm, right? That they basically said, look, we are now in the benefit of the doubt club. It does not matter who we lose. I don't care how many draft picks. I don't care coaches. We will always reload, and we will always be better than you. There's only a couple schools that were there, right? Maybe Clemson, Florida at the time. They're out. We said at the time, though, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, maybe we still thought Oklahoma could have been. They're out in the club. And so that's the point of all this. It began in that way, but over the season, those people got picked off one by one. Finally, it was UGA slaying Ohio State in a dragon-on-dragon battle, and then last night, they proved to you they will suffer no rivals. They are the unquestioned class of college football. David Pollack tells it to Nick Saban at his face at halftime, basically saying the age of Kirby is here. The age of Saban is over. The season ends in the same way it began, with Georgia absolutely decimating a quality opponent.
Oof. Yeah, it was ugly. Like I love the stats, and I just want to read. I didn't realize the stats were that bad till 3 a.m. this morning, as I'm just laying in bed, petting the dogs, trying to like regroup and see what the hell's going on in life. And I kind of look at what actually went down. Like, okay, why did Georgia have so much success in this game versus TCU? So I go to ESPN, pull up the stat thing, and first downs 32-9, third down conversions 9-13 compared to 2 of 11, total yards 589 to 188. 589 yards to 188, 36 rushing attempts. Obviously the 3 turnovers. I mean, it looked to me, if you didn't watch the game, didn't know the score, and you just looked at the box score, you would say, okay, this must have been like a varsity team facing a JV team. This must have been a Power 5 team. It was like a Power 5 team going against an FCS team. And you're like, this could not have been the national championship. This could not have been the supposed 2 best teams in America, but it was. And Georgia played as good as they could have played. And we said it all year, when Georgia plays this type of football game, when Georgia brings all the guns and all the weapons, and when Todd Monken is dealing as a coordinator, when Stetson's feeling himself, and when you got all the motions and shifts and guys, essentially wide ass open, when this defense plays to the level they can play to, there is no one in the country that can play with them. If Georgia would have faced Michigan last night, Georgia would have won by 20 plus points. If Georgia would have faced Ohio State or Alabama last night, I think they would have won by about 10 points, double digits.
Yeah,
Georgia's the best team in the country,
Yeah.
maybe even more. The best team in the country. Did they look like that all year? No. This was a team, I said it multiple times during the season, when they want to turn it on, when they hit that on switch, there's no one that can compete with them. They can score when they want. They can stop you when they want. They can make plays on both sides of the football. There are very few teams that can make it a competitive four-quarter game. And when Georgia's playing A-plus football. And last night was one of those occasions where TCU, man, they did not have the caliber of player to compete with Georgia. I'm not gonna say they belong. They did belong there. I will say that. Like, they deserve to be in the national championship. They just didn't have the players to compete with Georgia. It sucks.
So this is one thing about TCU being there, and probably my least favorite part of all of this is the revisionist history of, why was TCU there in the first place? They didn't deserve to be. TCU beat Michigan. Nobody questioned if Michigan deserved to be there. Why? Because Michigan went undefeated and beat the hell out of Ohio State and won the Big Ten. The same Ohio State team that had Georgia on the ropes and arguably should have knocked them out, but Georgia has attained that level of team where, like, even in the long odds situations, they're just never quite dead. They always find ways to win. You saw it during the height of the Saban dynasty. This is Georgia saying, okay, we're there now as well. But Michigan went undefeated in the Big Ten. They smashed Ohio State. TCU beat that team. That legitimized them. If they had lost early, if this was a 1-4 that went this way, then it would have been like, they didn't really deserve to be there. What you witnessed yesterday was not about TCU. It's about UGA. And it's about what happens when a coaching staff gets the most out of elite talent. And again, for all the micro focus that we had, individual players, individual matchups, trying to create pathways that maybe TCU could affect this. At the end of the day, none of it mattered, because when you zoom out to the macro, Georgia has 77% of the roster that are made up of blue chippers. TCU, 28%, nearly triple that of the Horned Frogs. So if you're talking about, it felt like a varsity versus JV match, in a lot of ways, it is almost literally a varsity versus JV match. And if you're coming after TCU today, my question is, why? I want to go after the teams that underperform, okay? I want to go after the teams that underperform. Like Texas A&M, they're fourth on the blue chip ratio chart. You know who the top three are? Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama. A&M's fourth. Awful. Oklahoma's top 10. Awful. Like, those are the teams that should be getting shit on. TCU overachieved. They did way more than they should have been able to with that roster, and there is nothing wrong with that. The problem is, if you have a more talented team and your coaches maximize that talent, it does not matter what the lesser talented team does. TCU could not have done anything because Georgia was playing at its best. At Ohio, it's funny, Cowherd last night, Aaron, told us about how Sean Payton texted him, was right? And was like, I love when I have a good team that wins a close game, which they play poorly, because I can hammer him the next week. So you got peak Georgia because they had to survive the brush with death against Ohio State. You know who else backed it up this morning? So LSU women's basketball coach Kim Mulkey, she's a legend. She has a ton of national championships. I didn't lead her into this. I asked her, and she basically said the same thing, that brush with death with Ohio State allowed Kirby Smart to achieve maximum Georgia at the right time and basically make this game unwinnable for TCU. So you can talk all the TCU shit you want, but they deserve to be there. They overachieved. And if I'm not criticizing them, it's not because they're not a big enough brand to criticize. It's because, in my view, objectively, they overperformed. And they got the most out of, they got more than anybody could have fathomed that roster getting. Criticism should go to all the other schools that I named, your A&Ms, your Oklahomas, your Texases, these top 10 teams that play like top 65 teams.
So I think we both agree that, like, TCU belonged to be in this football game. They had the resume. Listen, Alabama, were you a top 2-3 team in the country? Yeah, you were. I still think right now, today, when you kind of look back at the season, rewind, the 3 best teams in America are Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama. And I know Ohio State lost to Michigan. I still think if those 2 teams matched up, 10 times, I think Ohio State wins it 6 out of the 10 times. I still think they have better players to have the ability to win a championship. And obviously they showed their ability to match up with Georgia. I think Alabama is not as good as Georgia this year, but they can match up and make it a more interesting game. Like I said earlier, if Georgia faced all 3 of those teams, Michigan would probably get beat the worst. Alabama and Ohio State would kind of be in the same spot. And a little bit has to
Don't
do with
worry,
kind of the stars on offense.
Georgia's not facing all 3 of those teams, Aaron. Not next year, at least. We can talk about that 23 Georgia schedule in a second.
But I think what most fans are upset with is not the fact that TCU lost. Like, everyone expected them to lose. Like, come on, like this is Georgia, the blue chippers, the Vegas told us all. And speaking of Vegas,
Aaron told you.
For those
Aaron
who
told you the entire time, dude.
Yeah, but for those didn't want to listen to us, that 4-leg parlay yesterday hit big for the Dogs. Nice little payday to finish the year off for Team Snaps. But anyways, it's the way in which they lost. I think that's what's kind of tripping people up right now. It's not that they lost; it's the fact they lost 65-7. That they lost by 58 points. 58 points. Ooh. This is the shit that I did in high school against teams, T-Bob, like where you just scored on every possession and they didn't score on you. Like, that is what is still like, man, how bad did this hurt college football? Because we go back a week before and we were praising the playoffs. We were praising the fact that we had 2 incredible games and, hey, man, we're so excited for the expanded playoffs and this is going to be good for college football. Then bam, all of a sudden, 7 days later, we're getting the worst blowout in college football championship history. So it did hurt college football a little bit to see this game. It hurt it.
Yeah, no. Okay, look.
58 points. 58 points. The game was over after the first quarter.
I don't disagree that it hurt college football, but the problem is there's no great fix here. Now, certainly a 12-team playoff would be a partial fix because it would lead to a better game. But again, like we just said, right? We think Georgia probably beats anybody by 10 at least last night. So it doesn't
it'd be a better game, though. It would be a better game.
But it doesn't change that much. Ultimately, college football, like we touched on it last night, but college football. I disagree
with this, though.
Hold on.
I gotta disagree with it.
The reality of college football is that there are haves and there are have-nots, and the history. The history proves that, right? It is the majority of the time the kind of success and power and money is concentrated in a very few schools, and there are no salary caps. There's no draft order where the worst team gets to pick first. Like there's nothing to stop Georgia from riding this momentum. Kirby raising even more money. NIL raising more NIL money, more money for facilities, more buy-in because the return on investment is there because they're winning. People are happy. Yep. Like, no, things can spiral out of control where you can have a couple of teams that are outliers compared to the vast majority of the college football. But so like a part of this is just a natural function of the system, and you're never going to change the system. Maybe there's some sort of federal congressional policy that takes place that could seek to cap NIL, but even then, there are antitrust lawsuits like waiting to be fired off. So I don't
on the West Coast. The NIL's working in the West Coast. I mean, USC is a perfect example of that program. I know they're.
I would put USC in the elite, though. In the elite, so it's not really NIL is not democratizing college football. It is concentrating.
So this is my reasoning why. Like, okay. So I get the sense of yes, will we see the same maybe 5 teams competing for championships? Yes, I do think the gap, while it may not completely close, will get a little bit closer, to get a little narrower in the sense of, I always give the example of Bryce Young. If Bryce Young was a recruit right now from the state of California and he's looking at USC and the success of Caleb Williams and the excitement around the Trojan football, he's probably not going to Alabama because he can stay on the West Coast and go out there and fight for a championship and fight for the thought of getting into the playoffs. Expanded playoff is going to give the opportunity for teams on the West Coast to keep players on the West Coast. The best players in the country are in the Southeast. Like this little, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, you can kind of carve out Texas a little bit in there as well, especially with Texas and, A&M becoming a part of the SEC. Like that is the best players. But California has a ton of talent, especially in the skill position area. That may not win you championships, as we've seen, what Lincoln Riley's trying to do at Oklahoma and California, but at least it can get you dancing. It can make you interesting and maybe give the fan base some sense of hope that we can achieve this ending goal of making it to a championship.
For me to follow you down there, Aaron, I need like USC proving that USC's always been a have. The fact that they've been a have not is
what about Oregon?
More of a.
What about Oregon?
So that's what I was going to say. Well, Oregon's a bit odd because Oregon doesn't take regional buy-in to get the finances needed. They have Phil Knight. Right? Like the Nike factor is impossible to separate with Oregon. Like NIL, yes, works perfectly for Oregon. So to your point, that would be a school that could move into the halves that was not there previously. I need to more see like a Washington. Like if Washington can leverage the current era, and they've been good in the past as well, but they've never like
stayed. They're going to be good next year.
True half. That's what I'm saying. I agree. And I love when they're good. So if Washington can become like a legitimate year in and year out power, then maybe it has been a bit more democratized. I'm getting credit for it. But it's like you said, man, all the best players are in the Southeast. All national championships right now reside pretty much in the Southeast. Community-wise, the Southeast is where the buy-in is. It's where the finances are. And then like LA becomes interesting because, okay, maybe even like if you get 2% of buy-in in Los Angeles, that could equal 80% buy-in at LSU just because the volume of it, right? So but I do think we're going to have a handful of teams. But again, accept that reality. Accept the reality that maybe there's 4 or 5 teams. That is what it is. Okay, it's not the NFL.
But the path will be harder.
7 to 10 teams. It's not going to be. The path will be harder, and that's great. But my point is, I don't care because
the thought of TCU, winning 3 games against the likes of Michigan, say Alabama, Ohio State, to make it to a national championship game against Georgia isn't going to happen. But still, the inclusion into the process of being in the playoffs and having an opportunity to still get the upsets against the Michigan doesn't mean you have to make it all the way to a championship game.
No,
but
you knock somebody out like Tulane. Tulane would have knocked
for the
USC.
Game of football.
Tulane would have knocked USC out into a 12-team playoff. They would not run to a championship, but that would have been awesome because all of a sudden been like, oh, whoa, people's brackets are busted. They had USC winning it. Bam. So, but okay, so where I was going with all this in the end, though, is that I accept that reality, and it in no way diminishes college football for me. The fact that Kirby Smart in Georgia has built this true Death Star that blew up Alderaan last night does not diminish the sport as a whole, because I'm not here just for Star Wars: A New Hope. I'm here for it all. I'm here for the cartoons. I'm here for the books. I'm here for the comic books. Like, I'm here for all of bowl season, right? All these lesser games that we watched and we're hanging on the thread of watching like 2 7-6 teams battle. I'm here for Iowa and Kentucky not having a quarterback and sweating out an under in which somehow it goes to 21-0 early on, only for nobody to score again. Like, it's again, time is a flat circle. It goes back to the week 1 post-Saturday show that we did, in which we jumped around to the Appalachians to check in on App State in a crazy game there, right? We were in East Carolina watching NC State escape by the skin of their teeth. Then we were in the Georgia Dome watching the big dogs, the dragon of the realm emerge. Like, college football is great because it's not all the same. I love the NFL. It is without a doubt premier football. And it's easy to get into. There's 32 teams. It's small in scope. It's easy to know the storylines, the characters, the narratives. College football is not. It's complex. It's crazy. It's Byzantine. But that's why it's wonderful, because it's quirky, it's unique, and there's something for everyone. So, is this not going to be, you're never going to see a Super Bowl that's 62-7. Although, we did see 43-8 not long ago, Seahawks Broncos, but you'll never see a Super Bowl like this for the most part. But that's okay, because this single game does not define college football. College football is wonderful because it's just a ton of young men who love football at varying levels of talent, all getting a chance to live out their dream. And every now and then somebody breaks through and pops up on your radar from some school that you've never heard of, or you watch some game in some setting that you've never seen, and it's awesome. So it's so like in college football, it's weird. You almost have your cake and you eat it too. Like you get elite football at the top, and then you get a bunch of fun, wild craziness in the middle.
Well, honestly, to me, which is I think somewhat wild, is this might have been the most exciting year that I've been a part of college football with everything, like the entire season, the new teams, the big time upsets that you alluded to. I thought bowl season. I mean, everyone's been poo pooing bowl season forever. I thought this was the best bowl season that I may have seen in a decade. This was the best, first round of playoffs that we've ever seen in this new playoff era. So like college football took a massive, in my opinion, college football took a massive step forward this year. It's a coincidence that also snaps came into college football this year. So I just call me crazy. Call me crazy. Best season of football, snaps, best college football podcast came out together. It's just good stuff.
I believe that correlation. I believe the old saying is correlation does equal causation. So absolutely, we caused the. I mean, look, you're a Georgia guy, and they won the national championship, right? LSU wins the SC West despite being fifth best. Snaps comes into existence. It's connected dots here, folks. Speaking of which,
goodness.
We got a lot of people hanging out in the chat. Absolutely love it. If y'all can hit the like button, let's get to 70. Let's do it. Let's get to 100 at least. And then, look, I monitor the podcast reviews, and one day we can read them if we want, or we can come up with a bit where like there's an old part of my take bit that they did to drive reviews where it was like burn us, but give 5 stars and read them on air. Like maybe we'll end up doing something like that. But if you really want to help out the squad, wherever you listen to podcasts, please rate or review it. I see that our reviews on Apple have stalled a little bit. So if you're new here, please, if you like it, obviously, sub, rate, review, that all helps. Sorry, Aaron. Go ahead. Do you have any other thoughts before we move on to some of the other questions we had to get into?
Go Dogs. I'm just waiting for, actually, let me just do it right now. I haven't done it all show.
Oh no. I'll tell you what I can't get out of my head, and I don't know how I've never really heard it before.
Who's that coming down the tracks?
It's very catchy.
It's the mean machine in red and black. Ain't nothing finer in the land.
Okay, relax. I didn't mean
than the drunk, obnoxious Georgia fans. Go Dogs!
And it's a cheer that had to just fall on deaf ears and be a bit pathetic. But now with the back-to-back natties, it just you can do anything. You can even do that dumbass cheer and seem cool. It is up there in terms of earworm. That is up there with Rocky Top. Like immediately after I made fun of you for it last night, you stepped away and
Rocky
I caught
Top's
my
annoying.
brain.
I can't.
My brain went on autopilot and I started singing it once again. Okay, let's see here. Bilbo went back into the chat. Ask Aaron, why doesn't UJ have an original fight song? They literally play I've Been Working on the Railroad every first down. Do they really? I know.
I don't know about that one.
You understand the question? Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
All right. A couple questions that we put together for last night's game. Some kind of topics to play with here. Aaron, we'll start with one that I'm sure is close to your heart, given your tearful anecdote from earlier, and it's close to many of the listeners in here's hearts, and that is, how would you define Stetson Bennett's legacy after this second national title?
So this has been driving me crazy. I've listened to a lot of people today, and I disagree with every single one of them. Because they keep trying to make this who's a better professional quarterback, and that is what makes you a great college quarterback. Like that's the discussion. Oh, well, he's not Caleb Williams. He's not Bryce Young. He's not an NFL quarterback. So that means that he should not be considered one of the greatest college quarterbacks of all time. Shut the hell up. This isn't the NFL. I'm not worried about Stetson Bennett being a Super Bowl champion. All I give a damn about is what Stetson did wearing a Georgia uniform. That's all that matters. Stop trying to make this into who's going to be the better player in the NFL. It is stupid. It is stupid. We play college football, not NFL football. It's the dumbest argument. They're two different games, two different leagues. So what Stetson Bennett did in college as a college quarterback at the University of Georgia is some of the best football you'll ever see for a college quarterback in big-time games, in big-time moments, has done it better than anyone else that has worn the Georgia uniform, has more rings, trophies, MVPs. He's the greatest dog that has ever worn the red and black. I don't give a damn if he never makes it into the NFL. We're talking about college football, not NFL potential. So stop making this about that. That's it.
Put a name out there, Aaron. Who are we talking to? We're talking to somebody. You're not talking to the air.
Everyone. Everyone is saying that.
So name some names. I want to get the podcast beef going.
I'm not getting podcast beef going.
Is it Joel Klatt?
Joel Klatt.
Yes. Is it Eric
I listen to Joel on Mondays just to piss me off when I walk the dogs in the morning. Like, it's how I rev my engines every Monday morning. Like, I put on Joel and I just get really pissed off because of his hate for all things SEC. His
One of
jealousy
these days, I'm going
towards
to
the
play
league
the
of
Fox
SEC.
College theme song, and Joel Klatt's
I'm
going to
just
come
like,
out like it's a wrestler.
Yeah,
I'm like,
oh my God,
but that was no excuse. He's not going to make it to the NFL. He's not like, this is college, Joel. This isn't the NFL.
Yeah, I think
that's all I'm focused on. This small bubble.
So it seems a little wild when Aaron says that he's arguably the best Georgia Bulldog of all time, maybe even probably the best Georgia Bulldog of all time. But when you think about it, quarterbacks who win championships, even if they're not good, right? I mean, look, this is a relative good, okay? Because I'm about to say A.J. McCarron's not good. You know what I mean. A.J. McCarron's obviously good, but he's not like, he wasn't great even in college, right? He was not overwhelming in any sense. But quarterbacks that win championships in college get remembered. And they immediately get huge bumps. It's the most important position, and you led your team to victory. But where Stetson separates and the true legends separate, quarterbacks who dominate in those championships achieve immortality. And the stat that I keep going back to, because it is mind-blowing, is that Stetson Bennett played in 4 college football playoff games and won MVP all 4 games. That is unquestioned greatness. That is being at your best when your team needed it most. And that's how you get a statue, and that's how you end up on the top of these greatest of all time lists. Again, I agree with you, and you cannot come after Stetson's college resume. There's just no attacking.
Look at his performances in big time games against ranked teams when he's asked to play his best football. Like, was he a part of a team that had the best defense the past 2 years? And so he wasn't asked to maybe do as much. But when his number was called in big time games, there's not many quarterbacks that I would want with the football in my hand than Stetson Bennett. He finds a way to win in the fourth quarter. Like what? It blows my mind that the narrative was made so long ago that this kid is a walk-on, so he's not talented, so he doesn't deserve to be in any kind of consideration for anything because of how he started. And that is so far from the truth, man. He is talented. I think he's talented enough to make a roster at the next level. He's smart. He's athletic. He has great arm strength. I think he can surprise people. But once again, this isn't about NFL. This is about college football. And even Colin last night said, I mean, there's plenty of great college footballs. And I've seen people in the chat like, well, Aaron, you sucked in the NFL. Like, yeah, I did. I wasn't a great NFL player. Doesn't mean I wasn't a great college player.
Hold on. No. But I'm also going to
I want to get in this conversation. But I want to get in this conversation. Like, it's two different things. Yes, not everything translates to the NFL. But does it mean that you aren't worthy to be called a great college football player? Tim Tebow was a hell of a college football player. Maybe one of the best college football players. Wasn't a good NFL player. There's been plenty of guys that haven't had success. Doesn't mean that they weren't freaking studs in college football. And doesn't mean that we should say that they don't deserve our praise and recognition for what they did for those 4 or 5 years at their university.
Yeah.
So,
like, does Tebow suck? Does Tommy Frazier suck?
Yeah, so does Tebow suck at that point? Does Vince Young suck because he wasn't good in the NFL? Like, come on.
Yeah.
It's two different
And also,
things.
I mean, maybe this is just me coming from someone who almost made a roster and didn't. I mean, Aaron played multiple years in the league. So, like, what are we talking about there? Like, everybody's journey has to come to an end at some point, right? And if you make a roster multiple years, you're a dog. You're an absolute, oh, wow, that's maybe a little too literal, given that you are actually a dog. Andy J, who is more hated by other fans, Tim Tebow or Stetson? And then he says also War Rocky Top and Wild Dog Killer Eric Ainge. I don't know what that means, but who's more hated, Tim Tebow or Stetson by other fans? Definitely
Tim
Tebow, right? Yeah, for sure. Because it's not the underdog story of Stetson. Most people are probably cheering for him last year against Bama. Now, you saw a little bit of the villain turn this year, right? Where you see how it works, Aaron. You start to win too much, and all of a sudden, look how old Stetson is. He's out here stunting on 8th graders. This is ridiculous. Right?
No one said that about Hendon Hooker. No one said that about Hendon Hooker.
But you know why? Because Hendon Hooker didn't win back-to-back national championships. This is exactly what I've been trying to tell you, Aaron. You are the villain now. And you're going to build a statue of that villain.
Stetson doesn't care. There's a reason why I stayed in the state of Georgia and didn't move to Tampa after college. Even though I love Tampa. I love the water. I miss it. Much prefer it. Honestly, love it. But man, when you're a former quarterback at Georgia, life is good in the state, especially when you do good for the community, which I've tried to do. Stetson is set, bro. Stetson is so set. Oh, I need to tell Stetson he needs to he needs to. You can't. I guess you can't let it be known that you want to become a member of Augusta, but I may have to hint for him to become a member of Augusta.
Are you trying to get around? Are you a member of Augusta?
I am not a member of Augusta. I would love. I can't say it. I can't say it because once you say it, then you get in trouble and they don't invite you. But I would love to play around. So
can I say it for you or no? If I say it for you, will that get you in trouble?
Let's just not push that button because I really.
Okay, I agree. I'm backing off. Yeah. Pulling out. Something I was good at until this most recent kid. Jesus, dude.
That's why we got to get snipped, T-Bob. That's why we got to get snipped.
I know. I need to stop putting that off.
We can do it together.
We need to go ahead and cut it off. Maybe we can do it to each other.
As long as they're feeding, they can't really become pregnant again. Right?
Whew, boy. If you want to trust that logic, you go right.
You've never heard of Irish twins?
Yeah, exactly, dude. After it happened by accident this last time, I am terrified of slipping up again. And I was cocky.
Yeah, I do not want 3. I thought
my pullout game was undefeated. CJ says, Peter Warrick was one of the best college football players we've ever seen. NFL doesn't change that. I agree, which brings up the fact that we had a Peter Warrick sighting last night. They got John Williams to compose an incredible theme for the College Football National Championship. I still need that theme alone with just the music, ESPN. Aaron, get on the phone with your people, make it happen. But they had Peter Warrick in the montage video. It was awesome. Stetson's a great college quarterback, best Bulldog of all time. They're going to build a statue. Next question. What's the biggest?
Wait. The bigger question is what's his haircut going to be? I mean, are we going curly Stetson? Are we going Sequavius?
You saw Sequavius last night.
Can we please pull up Brom? Do we want, if there's a statue going to be made, are we going curly? Or are we going fade?
His fade last night.
I more like the picture, the OG picture. The OG picture of him and Kirby, as a recruit, and he's curly hair with the glasses. That's what I want. That's the statue I want out front.
I like the JUCO Stetson. JUCO Stetson is actually probably my favorite version of Stetson, where he's in that old jersey and he looks like that kid Rusty Ranks, who I think reviews beers on TikTok. I think he works for Friday Beers now, actually, but that's the best.
Hey, well, first off, Blake Walters. I know I haven't. This is dad life. T-Bob and I are both getting haircuts this week. We're
I'm cutting mine off.
We're wearing the hats.
My hair is so ridiculous.
I'll be calling the parade on Saturday. So I may, in honor of Stetson, do a Sequavius fade on Thursday.
See, so if you ride in the parade with the team,
I'm not riding. I'm announcing the parade. I'll be in a booth in the stadium. I'm not actually in any float. I'll be in the
standing
booth.
next to Stetson, hey.
I'll be feeding him grapes and waiting on him.
What is the biggest hurdle to Kirby having a Saban-esque run?
I can start. Next year is how difficult the schedule is. I mean, my God, that schedule next year is so tough. I don't know how they're going to three-peat, T-Bob. I don't know how they're going to three-peat. Can we pull up the schedule from? Can we please pull up next year's schedule somehow? Oh my God! It is probably Georgia has the hardest schedule in America next season. It is. I mean, they may go 8-4. Honestly, I mean, the committee must have known that they were going to win back-to-back national championships, so they loaded the non-conference up for my Bulldogs.
Yeah, so Georgia next year starts with 4 home games in a row to the tune of UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, and UAB. Then they're going to go to Jordan-Hare. Then they're going to play Kentucky at home, 5 of the first 6 games at home. Then you go to Vanderbilt. Then you have a bye because, sure, they deserve a bye, even though they've already had like 4 bye weeks mixed in there to begin with. Then Florida and Jacksonville. Again, 2 more home games at Mizzou and Ole Miss. I don't understand it. And then at Tennessee, at Georgia Tech. It boggles the mind. It boggles the mind. And a year removed from challenging yourselves with Oregon, you've gone full Michigan. And be careful, okay? Be careful because you're pissing off the football gods, okay? You're already on top, and you're trying to
take the first team that goes 3. Is this
what they say?
Going to go 3?
There's an old historical saying that I love that my guy Dan Carlin exposed me to. It's a saying that describes how empires are made, Aaron, and how they fall. Right? They say wooden clogs on the way up, silk slippers on the way down. Okay. You've been on the climb. You've been fighting. You've been molded by hardship and adversity. Nick Saban, Alabama, needing to beat the guys that always beat you. You built those wooden clogs. You built those calluses, that toughness, and you made it to the top. But now you're all fat and happy, and you've adopted their Chinese culture. You're eating too much. You're drinking whatever you want. Instead of wearing animal skins, you're wearing like silk pajamas. And next thing you're like, oh, we could schedule UT Martin and Ball State and UAB. That doesn't matter. We're Georgia.
They had Oklahoma. They had Oklahoma. They had Oklahoma, T-Bob.
Punched in the mouth. You get punched in the mouth and you lose. Okay.
They had Oklahoma on the schedule.
And what happened?
They had Oklahoma on the schedule. And our great commissioner decided that he wanted to see Georgia with a 3-peat and took him off the schedule with all the restructuring of conferences.
All I know is this is a bad sign. You think it's a good sign because, and it will be. You're going to roll the wins in all these games, but you're going to be an ill-prepared, soft football team when push comes to shove next year at the end. Ill-prepared, cocky, and soft. The 3-peat will not happen. Look at me, Georgia fans. Mark this down. Remember this. Look into my eyes. You're on the edge of forgetting the face of your father. You will forget, and in the end, you will lose your way. This 3-peat is not happening, and guess what? Nick Saban is coming, and you can thank David Pollack because he went after Nick last night. Why the hell would you poke the devil in the belly? Okay, that's a great way to end up in hell. So you ask me, what's the biggest hurdle to Kirby Smart having a Saban-esque run? It's the Saban part of Saban-esque.
Nope.
UJ's in trouble. UJ's in
not
trouble.
With Alabama. Not with Alabama. I'm telling you, LSU is going to win the West next year. Alabama's better find a quarterback in the portal after spring. They better hope some great quarterback. But at that point, like, you're going to enter the portal as a quarterback in the spring because you're not a starter at your university. So if you can't start at your university, what gives me confidence that you can go to Alabama and do
Alabama only wins
they're
natties
in trouble.
They have shitty quarterbacks. So that's patently untrue. They only win natties when they have shitty quarterbacks. No, think about
Mac Jones, who's a first-round quarterback. Mac Jones, first-round quarterback.
Mac Jones sucks. Now, granted, they didn't. You know, they didn't do him any favors, being like, "Hey, let's hire Patricia as the OC."
Yeah,
that's
what
insane.
Was that?
I don't know. He got fired
come on.
Today. He got fired
thank
today.
God.
But I'm not a Mac Jones believer, dude. I'm not a Mac Jones. Mickey Mouse championship, all the best receivers. I'm not really a big Mac Jones believer. Alabama. I don't know. I mean, this is all. I don't actually know if this is true.
I'm not scared of Alabama next year. I think Alabama's going to be like a 10-2, 9-3 football team next year.
See, what I'm thinking, though, does Alabama zig when everybody's zagging? Do you have a Milroe or another running quarterback where you go more power run and you kind of bring it back old school, like a la the Eagles in the NFL?
When's the last time Alabama had a dominant running offensive line? It's not like they've shown
Yeah,
us
no, they've
this
been shitty
dominant
for
offensive
2
line.
years in a row.
They've been crappy at the offensive line.
Yeah.
I mean, they got some young receivers they like next year, but if you don't have a quarterback that can throw them the football, I don't know, man. I think Alabama's going to be good, not great next year.
Georgia fans, don't tell me to stop hating after reading the schedule. The schedule's infuriating. How is a person supposed to read this schedule? Like, you want to know what's wrong with college football? The best team in the country playing UT Martin, Ball State, and UAB 3 of the first 4 weeks. That's awful. Like that's awful for y'all. Like, do y'all want to watch? Do y'all want to watch those games?
Tennessee's going to be tough.
Aaron, do you want to watch those games? Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe it will. I believe in Tennessee. We've talked about it. Okay, I think it will, but we don't know. The Tennessee team that's only won 33% of its SEC games over the past 15 years previous to this last year. So.
Hey, I gotta find the early money line on Carson Beck to win the Heisman next year. I might throw my winnings from last night on that for fun.
I don't think you can win the Heisman. I literally don't think you win the Heisman with the schedule this bad. Like people will be, because either his stats will suffer because he's only playing like a quarter or two, or
no, but they got to give him a lot of snaps in the first 4 games to get his confidence up. He's probably going to throw about 4 touchdowns per game. Georgia didn't go out into this offseason like 2 weeks ago and get 2 of the best receivers in the transfer portal to not throw the football over and over and over and over again and run an offense that Monken wants. They have the best tight end in America coming back. A.D. Mitchell, Lad McConkey.
Wait, I want to talk about Monken. Forget about all those other guys. I want to talk about Monken before you go.
Monken is a stud.
That's what I want to ask you about, because ironically, for all the talk of Kirby and all the 5 stars and all the NFL players, it does seem like the final piece of the alchemical puzzle was Todd Monken coming in to finally push you across. And maybe it's even the chemical reaction between him and Stetson Bennett, but like what did Todd Monken do to get so much out of this offense?
Well, this is what drove me a little bit crazy last night. And I had to be respectful because, Colin does write our check. So I didn't want to go too crazy on this one. But, he said, did you hear anything I just said, T-Bob?
Yeah, I did. You had to be respectful of Colin. Good. Yeah, don't piss off our boss.
I don't want to piss off our boss.
Don't piss off Colin.
Don't piss off Colin. So make sure he doesn't listen to this. But I thought he was completely wrong when he said the national narrative of Georgia is they're just a defensive football team. Like, I get that. Like, yes, are they one of the best defenses in the country the past 2 years? Hell yeah, they are. But this isn't – because he compared them to Alabama. Alabama wasn't scoring 40, 50 points a game like Georgia's been doing. Georgia's been elite on offense. And it goes back to like, it's hard for people to wrap their brain around it for the fact that it's not going through elite receivers. It's not going through a first round quarterback, and it's not going through a first round receiver. This is an offense that's scoring points for the tight ends, the running backs, and then receivers. It's different. It's unique. Doesn't mean it's not elite. It is elite. This is one of the best offenses in the country this year. So, yes, I know that people may think like, oh, it's defense, it's Kirby, so it has to be. No. Todd Monken, top 3 offensive coordinator in the country, one of the best offenses in the country, and part of the reason why they won back-to-back national championships. So people need to rethink of what this Georgia football team is about. And I think this offense will only get better next year.
I think that – so, I think I obviously agree with you that this is an elite offense, but I do get where Colin's coming from. If you don't watch college football like we do, I think you probably do just fall back on Georgia as a defensive team. So maybe you could say that's the national perspective, but it's a perspective that is ultimately wrong. Because, they're great on both. Like Alpha Dog in the chat says they literally outscored Ohio State, and everyone says Ohio State is the best offense. See, so, yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go. But, hey. You know what else kept getting brought up last night? These 3 letters right here. How about that? LSU. You and Colin couldn't keep Brian Kelly out your mouth. You love to see it, dude. Brian Kelly bringing the Tigers.
We don't want you to leave us, T-Bob. We love you so much. We don't want you to leave us because it's turning such a Georgia-heavy show.
LSU is going to start by beating Florida State's ass. After the bye, they're going to go to Tuscaloosa. They're going to beat that Alabama ass again. Then they're going to be home against Florida because that's how an actual schedule works. You play multiple good teams multiple weeks in a row. And then that battle-hardened adversity forged Tigers are going to gain revenge in a place where they beat you all too many times. Atlanta, the Mercedes-Benz, whatever you call it. The Bulldogs are going to get their ass kicked by LSU in the FC Championship next year. Just called it. Snap season 2. It's a guarantee. Snap season 2 guarantee.
Well, I think we got to roll.
I say season 2. We're not going anywhere. This goes year round. We got to go. Yeah. We love you. Huge thank you to Ryan Brumley, Pat Gunner, Paul Farrington, Danny Cardenas. Huge thank you to Aaron Murray. Huge thank you to all of y'all hanging out in the chat. You know that we really love y'all, man. And thank you for helping us grow the show. Again, if you really want to help, please, where you listen to podcasts, rate or review it. I look at them, we read them. It helps a ton. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you sign up for FanDuel, use the promo code SNAPS. Shout out the FanDuel Sportsbook app. And thank you to Papa Colin as well for coming on last night, for having us here, for making this all happen. Love y'all, and we'll see you back tomorrow for a brand new episode of Snaps.